Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. I hope you're doing very, very well. We are back with another episode of 3 Points Perspective. I'm joined by Charlie and Nina today. Good to see you guys. This is the OG 3 Points Perspective gang. We used to do it all the time, but now whoever can make it can make it. But it's good to be back on with you guys and plenty to talk about. I think we spoke about this yesterday, Nina, didn't we? There doesn't seem to be a lot of news, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there's a lot going on.
Yeah, no, true. I mean, I think with Chelsea, it's quite a usual thing that there is always something to talk about, especially like mid-season if things have been, like last year and the previous year been falling apart, we've always kind of discussed that. And then now we've had like a good start to the season and now things are sort of going downhill. So once again, there's a lot to talk about. And I just think that, we're a club where things are always happening and never a quiet day. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on.
100%. I feel like it is quieter than it was to an extent that we're not doing as much business. If you look at
Yeah.
this January and compare it to what we were doing before, but I think the reason there's so much going on is because there is a clear divide in the fan base, and this is not a divide that happened over a long period of time. I think this is a divide that's honestly happened within a couple of months, if that, since December. I think a lot of fans were very happy. You had a small section of the fan base, obviously, who may not have been happy because of the ownership and our strategy and other things as well. But generally speaking, if the results are good, the fan base are happy. That's just how it is, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because as long as you're winning, that's all you want. But now we're starting to see some of the ideas coming into fruition, and this is where we talk about a process, and we've spoken about a process many times. Trust the process. I'm seeing a hashtag going around, trust the protest. Honestly, there is such a big divide. I mean, people have a go at me for having a go at the manager. You also have to have a go at the people who employ the manager, but then who employed the people that employ the manager in the first place? So many different things you can look at and zone in on. But I mean, Charlie, when you look at this whole scenario, where do you see the biggest problem at this moment of time?
Mate, it's difficult to pinpoint one major issue because everyone collectively is not doing good enough. You can look at the way that the squad's been put together. That's not good enough, the way that's happened. So that falls on the responsibility of the sporting directors, but then the responsibility who employed them. The owners employed them. The manager needs to do better. For me, the manager's the one that's taking the least responsibility, in my opinion. Yes, he's got to do better and find ways of getting more out of these players, because 6 weeks ago you were getting a lot out of this group and now you're getting absolutely zero out of everyone. That's a concern for me, that there's been such a large collective drop off from what we saw earlier in the season. It's collective responsibility for everyone. I think the biggest concern for me is that there's just a weak mentality that's just like seeping through the club from top to bottom. You've got manager sort of just brushing off, going out of cups like it doesn't matter. Players don't seem bothered. All kind of semblance of a winning culture that was here previously seems to have been completely eroded. There just seems to be no winning mentality in the club whatsoever, whether that's the players on the pitch, whether that's the manager, whether that's the directors, whether that's the ownership. No one seems that arsed that we're not doing that well. And so that's the biggest problem for me. And whilst, people go at the ownership, I understand that and I get that, because there has to be improvements there and there are things that they've done that are just not good enough. But at the same time, you also got to pick your battles. And people thinking they can force the ownership out is, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's all very well organising protests, and I've got no issue with people organising protests if there's a clear message and you're getting your point across and you've got relevant people on board. I don't want to shit on people, but if you're organising something and 5 people turn up, it's doing nothing. It's doing absolutely nothing. So if you're going to do this, and I've not got a problem with it being done, you've got to make sure that you're going to get enough people to turn up that's actually going to create a relevant story and create, enough interest to actually catch the owner's attention. Because when you see things where you've got 5-10 people turning up, ownership will see that and think, well, the fan base aren't that bothered. That obviously doesn't represent much of the fan base at all. And I think you've got a lot of the fan base that will feel a certain way, but when it comes to taking action to try and do something about it, they're actually not that fussed.
Well, do you know what? Like, you talk about hashtags, Alex. At this time last year, the trending hashtag was Poch out. This time round, it's...
Was that the trending hashtag?
Huh?
Was that the trending hashtag?
Well, it was, yeah.
Oh.
Like, at this point, we'd lost 4-2 to Wolves at home. That was one of the biggest games that sent people over the edge.
That wasn't a good day. That's true.
No, it wasn't a good day. And then all talks were, about Pochettino. But this time around, it's a little bit different because people are looking further up above. And, yes, we can question Maresca, and he certainly hasn't been perfect in recent games and also has partial responsibility. But ultimately, it always has been bigger than the manager. For me personally, even last year, I always looked further above. And that's why I maybe cut Potter and Poch a little bit more slack than other people, because I always think that some of the deeper rooted problems stemmed from the owners and the decisions that were made by the sporting directors, the way that we've been squad building, and the fact that key areas still get left over to the next window and then are also brushed under the carpet and then left to the next window, also brushed under the carpet, and then we're kind of we have no choice but to just be left with whatever's happening on the pitch and focus on the football, because ultimately at the end of the day, that is exactly what we do. We go to the games to watch the football. We go to the games, we walk away after, we talk about the football, we discuss the games. But now it's becoming a thing where we're seeing that the football and why it's gone bad and why it's, become so dire and why we're now stuck with no kind of fresh ideas is ultimately, again, because of the bigger decisions that were made from further up above. And that's why people are turning now to look elsewhere and to question the owners and to question the sporting directors. And I think that's quite fair because, okay, you got it wrong once, you got it wrong twice. If you've got it wrong again, and ultimately you're also setting up any manager anyway to fail kind of from the get-go, then obviously it's much, much bigger now than just the manager. So yeah, I think that's quite an interesting thing that we're seeing a difference in where people are looking now as the kind of bigger problem.
They talk about a divide, right? I think that divide's always been there, mate. It's just that when we're doing well and you're winning, it gets brushed over. But now that we're losing and we're not doing well, it's come to the forefront again. Winning does a lot of things. Winning just makes people forget about any issues or any feelings they have surrounding the club. Maybe not completely, but certainly puts them to the back of their mind. But then these thoughts then come back to the forefront again when you're not doing well. So I think there's just been suddenly a divide that's appeared in the last few weeks because we're not doing well. That divide's always been there. Even when we were doing well, there's been people that were feeling the way that they're feeling now. It's just that obviously the results and how we were doing kind of papered over that. And people were, the winning makes you not really talk about it because you're doing well on the pitch. Now that we're not doing well on the pitch, it gets highlighted even further. I can guarantee, if we go on a run and sort of win 5-6 games on the spin, which obviously seems a long way at the moment. But, if we were to do that again, you hear a lot of that conversation that's going on now, that fades into the background again.
I do agree with you on that perspective. I think that, again, it's all about results. And from my standpoint as well, I don't know enough about the legalities to really be able to say what can happen with this ownership, because I've spoken with people that don't believe they can sell, which is what everyone was told, based on the the Glazer clause or something like that. But then also you've got people that are saying that they've spoken with lawyers and solicitors, and there is clearly a loophole in this contract. There's always a loophole, and nobody would tie themselves into a business for 10 years knowing that they can't escape from that. And that is also a very valid point.
They can escape from it though, because they can sell the shares between themselves. If Barley and Clearlake wanted out, they could sell to Bowley. Like, do you know
Well,
what I
they
mean?
wanted
Like,
to buy each
I
other
think
out,
that
didn't
that
they?
standpoint, Charlie, is more on the sense of the whole consortium rather than an individual part of it. So that's where maybe there might be a little bit of confusion. I personally, I don't know enough about it, so I probably need to look into it a little bit more. But I have to agree that it would seem very strange for a club to not, for you not to have a way to exit the club. It just seems very silly to me. From a business standpoint, who does that? And these are guys that, again, we know why they're here. It's about money. We know that this is not something that's brand new. So why would you risk potentially losing money, because football clubs can lose an awful lot of money if they're not successful, potentially 5 years down the line, and then you know that you're still going to be tied into the club for a few years before you can sell off. And that is where I think a portion of the fans are coming from. And I think that it's a very fair point. So I would like to know more about it. I mean, guys,
it should be easy to find that information. If these people are saying this, well, surely then that they've seen that information somewhere. So show that information to prove that it's true. Do you know what I mean?
I'd like to see it. I would love to see it.
This is my point. Like, I'm not saying that people are making stuff up, but if you're saying that, then there should be evidence out there which is backing your point up. If you've got zero evidence, then what are you basing that? What are you basing that on? That would be my point. I'm not disbelieving people, but if you're making a point, then you should have the relevant evidence to back it up. And at the moment, I'm hearing a lot of people say this, and they're providing zero evidence to their claims.
I think we should definitely look at this. I mean, I'll be doing the show in about an hour and a bit, so I'll probably.
But you've got to see it. Have you seen any evidence? We've all heard people say that. Have you seen any evidence provided from anyone anywhere stating what they're saying?
If I'm totally honest, Charlie, I haven't dived into it enough. That's the God honest truth. Like, I haven't really.
No, neither have I. But if people are saying things, then they should be providing the evidence that backs it up.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Maybe they do have evidence. I haven't seen it. Again, we'll have to let us see in the comments, guys. Let us know, because if there is a link or something, honestly, give us a link and I'll check it out. I'm
someone constructed a case, or like a 755-page case with all the evidence and all the points.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take what I can get at this point, because it seems like you're hearing so many different opinions. It's like, who's gospel here? Everyone thinks they're right. But again, I don't know enough about it. I mean, what's your take on it, Nina? Do you think they can sell? Do you think that they have any interest in selling? What's your standpoint?
No, I don't think so. I think if I'm looking at their perspective, if I was them, I'd be looking at this and saying, no way would I sell. And the fact that, we have spoken about them being ambitious in terms of, buying players and kind of boosting their market values and all these kind of loopholes they found in the transfer windows to sign players. We've been questioned so much, like, how has Chelsea done this? Like, we've had to make people literally construct, you talk about evidence, actual articles on how Chelsea are spending and how they're doing business in transfer windows and stuff, because, we've found new loopholes and stuff. But, I think ultimately they're looking at this and, yeah, okay, it does really look like it's financially driven. So they're businessmen at the end of the day, right? And they're, billionaires, and there's a reason they've gotten to this level, right? Because one thing they know is business for sure. Whether they're interested in how the football's going, I don't know. But from a pure business side of things, they're probably still looking at this and thinking in years to come, this will eventually, come back to, there'll be a return there, right? And I think if you're looking at it purely from a business side of things, then you're sitting there and you'll be quite happy with them with how things are going.
They've always maintained, right? What's the one thing they've always maintained? They view this as a long-term project.
Exactly.
They're not going to suddenly, we're not even 3 years in May. I think it'll be 3 years, right?
No.
And people can have these fantasy ideas that they think they can force them out and whatnot. At the end of the day, they've always said, whether we agree with it or not, they view this as a long-term project. So long term for me, you're looking at 5 years plus. Okay, look, things can change, of course they can, but I'm not sort of getting any indication in my thoughts that these guys are just going to abandon their plan for the football club because like 3 years in, when they've consistently maintained everything's long term. One thing they have got a plan for is long term. At the moment, there seems to be no plan for short to medium term, but this is always been viewed as a long term project. So I would question if that's what they've set out to do to be successful in the long term. Why would you sell up 3 years in? You just wouldn't.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think from Clearlake's standpoint, that strikes me as a 10-year project. Again, from what I've read, Bowley wants to be here for a longer period. And he's been involved in sports before with baseball, for example. He's involved with the Lakers as well. He's not looking to sell his shares in those perspectives.
He wants more shares in Chelsea as well, if he can get them.
Absolutely. I mean, I know people don't like Bowley either because of what's happened with Vivid Seats. I would rather have him than Clearlake. That's my
100%.
I would rather have him. If you're asking me to pick between the two, and people go, "Well, you can't pick either of them," well, I would pick Bowley over Clearlake. Would I like to have a nice Saudi king, crown prince, or whatever it is? Do I want the Saudis? Do I want the Qataris? I would love to be owned by a state like Man City. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And maybe in 7 years' time, it could happen. And I'm here for it. But in the short term, I mean, if Bowley ever decides to get involved again, I think that now that we have a little bit more of an understanding of what actually happens when you spend such a large amount of money in a short period, then, it could potentially be more successful. But who knows?
I think there's something quite important here in the fact that obviously, like you both touched on it, results are so important. And if somehow things kind of turn around this at the end of this season and, we achieve our goals now, whatever's left of it anyway, I think that again will die down quite a little bit. What I'm worried about is from this point on, if, because I mean, worldwide fans are looking to match day going fans, which I mean, 3 of us are, to actually do something, right? And in terms of kind of protesting, right, to push the owners out, whatever, or just to make our point clear. But what the issue with that is, I'm afraid of how this will reflect on the players. And if I've brought in players here, tried to sell them a dream of what this long-term project here at Chelsea looks like, and I'm trying to motivate young players that have barely even had experience playing senior football at this level, let alone in literally arguably the best league in the world, how am I supposed to motivate those players if I'm in the ground and there's things being shouted towards the owners that is being navigated elsewhere, and it becomes a very hostile environment there, let alone because I mean, Stamford Bridge has been a difficult place for players to play anyway. The atmosphere has been quite poor. We have tried to work our way into making it great again this year, but obviously with results that changes, and it's been hot and cold. But I'm afraid that this will eventually kind of be, what's the word, it will have a knock-off effect on the players.
It will have an impact on how we play. Just one thing, Nina. Do you? I mean, if our squad is good enough, and this goes nicely to our next point, irrespective of the problems outside of the pitch, with the ownership and everything else, if you're a good player and if you have a good enough mentality, I would argue that you should just be able to soak it up. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'm saying that you should be able to soak it up, because there's always
Alex. I think there's a difference between good enough, though, in terms of like actual footballing ability, and then also strong enough mentally as a player. Like if you've been through a lot in your career and you've won things, you've lost things, you've been up and down, and ultimately you've been very competitive in your career, you're having a different mentality. But a lot of the players we brought in and the ones that will still come in are young and have literally not had any experience. If you're between 18 and 22, like how much of a mentality have you built from where you've played and how strong you are? Do you know what I mean? And a lot of them are supposed to have come into Chelsea to grow and kind of learn on the job here and now. And this is, again, one of my biggest issues. We don't have the experience, and we didn't bring in the leaders to make this an easier transition and to be able to ultimately help them through this. So we've all kind of trusted that they'll settle into this environment, even though, it's been difficult. Not all players have managed as well. You can point to the players who have had difficulty developing here and, have just not hit the ground running and probably never will. But equally, what I mean by that is it's a lot easier if you're a player that you can stand up to it, can still play. But we've invited a lot of players into this project that, again, not much experience apart from Enzo Fernandez, who here has really won a major trophy. you know, apart from, again, Sterling, who came in, he's not here anymore. He won Premier League titles, yes. But who else, right? Thiago Silva, he's gone as well. He'd won trophies. That was experience. That was leadership there. But everyone else has just been invited into kind of coming along to fight, to compete one day for these trophies and this long-term project. Great. But, you know, they'll lose motivation eventually as well. If they're trying to fight for something that the fans don't believe is worthwhile, then what's the point of them believing it as well? Do you know what I mean? Or trying. And a lot of people will say, well, players will eventually start wanting out as well. If, you know, God forbid it gets as bad as, you know, we think and anticipate. And if it becomes so toxic, players will want out as well. And, you know, we're all quite fearful of the biggest one, the most obvious one that could be Cole Palmer, obviously. So I'm just saying that I am afraid of how this, like the bigger consequences as well that will come from this, because I think, you know, we're dealing with something really, really big here.
Charlie?
What about the squad?
Yeah.
Look, it's not someone said they lost respect for me the other day because I called the squad dog shit. It might have been a bit strong, but it's more in terms of the way that it's been put together, because I haven't got an issue with signing young talented players. But what I have got an issue with is what Nina touched on, is that you're putting them into a team where they got no experienced heads to learn from. You know, you're asking a load of people to learn the job. Imagine, like, you know, you're a company and you've employed a load of new people, all of them with no experience, and you're expecting them to do a great job straight away and make no mistakes. Like, we're basically asking players with zero experience to hit the ground running and perform instantly with no help, basically. Because everywhere you look, there's no experience. There's no experience on the pitch. There's little to no experience in the dugout. There's no experience in putting a top squad together in terms of sporting directors. And there's no experience, apart from Bowley, who is not involved in the day-to-day of the football club at all. There's no experience in the ownership in sport. So you've got no experience at multiple levels of the club from top to bottom. I just look at it and I cannot understand how you look at how you get to a position to build a squad and you think signing a load of players all at the same age and putting no experienced winners in there is going to be a recipe for success. Look at all the teams that have been successful and won stuff. There's a combination of youth and experience. You're watching games last night. Look at Real Madrid. Look at Man City. I know Man City are obviously not doing as well right now, but there is a combination of talented youngsters with experienced professionals. And you watch those Champions League games and you look at the top teams around Europe. You look at the top teams in the Premier League. People say that we're maybe, you know, I've said it before, we're 2 or 3 signings away from competing. We're a million miles away from being anywhere near these teams, in my opinion, in terms of what we've got as a squad. A million miles away. Look back to and I hate looking back because it's pointless, but look back to the teams that won, the teams that Chelsea won with, right? Winning Premier League titles, winning Champions Leagues. Look at those leaders. Look at the mentality in that squad. Look at the combination of youth and experience.
There's not even a quarter of that.
Exactly. Compare what we are now to the squads and the teams that we used to have when we were winning. It couldn't be further away. It is an absolute million miles away. And the worrying thing for me is how no one can see that. In terms of, not, I don't mean fans, in terms of people in charge making decisions. Look how far we've come away from being a team and having a culture of winning at this club. We've gone to the complete opposite end of the spectrum now.
But also, like, I just want to say that on paper, we have signed talented players. We've been excited about the young talent we've brought in, but equally, we have been requesting and asking for experience in leadership. And it just seems like such an obvious thing to need in a football team or in any sport. You know, it doesn't matter, just to have experienced individuals there, like Charlie referred to, in real life, like in a company, like someone to learn from, someone to look to. Thiago Silva was that anchor for us. And then when he left, it was never replaced, not even the slightest bit. And I just think there's nothing wrong with being an ambitious in wanting this kind of new model of building young, exciting talent and scouting from all around the world, but pair it with experience, you know, bring in someone. And I'm sorry that, you know, when you brought in Sterling and Aubameyang, well, that didn't quite cut it, did it? So then look elsewhere.
But the idea was right, though.
Yeah, no, the idea was
Yeah.
right. I agree with you, because again, it was like at the time we were missing some Prem proven experience, right? Especially up front, and to have those individuals come in with the CVs they've had and the goals they've scored, it looked great on paper. But again, that didn't work out. We've moved on from them. Then look elsewhere, bring somebody else in. And I think ultimately this is the biggest thing. And it would have been so different. And I think we would have, they would have earned so much more respect from the fans if they'd brought us in from that. And you know, Charlie, you talk about those leaders and those people, like we don't have a quarter of that. And I also mentioned it to Alex yesterday that I think it's going to be so long since we have longevity like that again, because you look at the players we have and the individuals we have, like how many of them are you guys forming a really strong affinity for? Like we're obviously liking them and, you know, we're taking a liking into them. They are our players and we support and back them, of course. But I'm talking over a long period of time, these players that are going to be here, that are going to be our backbone, that are going to be you know, those kinds of individuals that pick your team up, and whoever comes in learns from them, and it all starts from them, like a backbone. Like you look at the other teams they have. Yeah, Liverpool have gone through a lot of transition. They've got a new manager, but ultimately they have also got players that have been the backbone for them and that have been there for more than, I mean, with us, what, the longest player apart from Reece James has probably been at the club for about 3 years, and without Trevor Chalobah. But you guys know where I'm getting at. You know, our other teams, they've got players that have had longevity there, that understand the ethos of the club, that understand what this is. And I mean, is that a naive way to look at it? Maybe, yeah, because the owners don't want that. They don't want us to have anything of the old Chelsea, right? This is supposed to be a new project. So why are we as fans asking and demanding about our old Chelsea when they've made it crystal clear that this isn't the old Chelsea anymore, and things are being done differently now, that things are being, you know, constructed differently now. So ultimately they've stripped all of that away, and then here we are, oh, silly little fans requesting our old Chelsea. So yeah, I just think that the fact that we're not even aligning with this kind of future project or whatever this is meant to be is literally the first problem, isn't it?
But also with sorry, quickly, just with the way, with the sort of the way that we're doing accumulating these players, right? There's no guarantees that any of this works. When you're signing this young talent, you're signing these players based on how good you think they're going to become. There's no guarantees that these players become anywhere near as good as you think they're going to become. And they're only going to become as good as you think they are if you provide the right environment for them to flourish in. I don't think any of us can sit here and say that Chelsea right now is a good environment for any young player to develop in. When was the last time Chelsea signed a talented youngster and developed them into a top-class player? And I'm not talking about from the academy. I mean, when did we last sign a young player and develop them from potential into world-class player? Chelsea is not a good environment for developing young players into top-class professionals. It simply isn't. And can we really sit here and say that we're confident that a lot of these players that we sign are going to become world-class at Chelsea and are going to become some of the best players in the world? Because I can't sit here and say that. And certainly some of the players in this squad have got that potential in them. But right now, for me, we're not providing an environment that is conducive to these players reaching their potential.
It's like a casino. You know, you're rolling the dice. You're rolling the dice.
You're just going red or black on it.
8 or 9 times out of 10, you probably get it wrong.
You get one big win and you dine out on it. You know, we've all got mates that go like, oh, you know, they go gambling every week, but they lose most of the times. But they'll always tell you about the one time they won like $5,000 or whatever. It's a little bit like that with us, because for every Cole Palmer, you're going to be making heavy losses. Like Cole Palmer is the one that stuck.
Let's look at the players that are in those positions. You signed Cole Palmer. You've also had. I mean, I'll ask you this open-ended, yes or no, as in hit or miss. Noni Madueke.
I'd go more hit right now than miss.
Fair enough. João Felix.
Obviously miss.
Chukwuemeka.
Well, it would go down as a miss, but I actually really like him, but it is a miss.
I like him as well.
I think he's going to pull out.
Who?
Cassidy.
Miss.
Dewsbury Hall.
Well,
Miss.
It's early, but you'd have to say a miss right now, yeah.
Who else have we got on the Mudryk?
That has to go down as a miss. It has to, yeah.
That is a miss. You know, so you understand the point. Obviously, if you're bringing in a player like Palmer, how much money did you have to spend? You look at Palmer as a bargain, and it is a bargain because we've got a great
He's done
deal.
better than anyone thought.
But then if you look at the money we had to spend in order to find that bargain, because we thought all of the other players were bargains, it actually turns out to be hundreds of millions of pounds. So what was the point of signing, of using that strategy when you could have just gone out and spent hundreds of millions on, let's just say, 4 top players, maybe even 5 you could have squeezed out of that if you were negotiating well. And you would have had lots of space to free up a slightly higher wage bracket. We're not saying $250,000 a week, but we're saying slightly higher than what our cap is at the moment. So if we were going from 150k wage cap, we go up to 200 grand. We're not exactly asking for the world here. I'm not asking for an Erling Haaland contract, but yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that the strategy in that sense is too hit and miss. And I don't have a problem with signing the young players. And we speak about Esteval coming in. There's news coming out about Kendry Pires and how we want to develop him in Europe before he turns 18 and bring him into the club. So he's had some experience at that time. And these are genuinely world-class talents. They are the best of the best in their age brackets. So again, you can't knock the ambition in that respect. But if it's really a long-term project like what we're hearing, and again, we are neglecting short-term, maybe the strategy, and it seems stupid, but maybe it's true, that the strategy is literally to wait until these young boys, these 19-year-olds, reach their peak age of 26, 27, and that is the foundation that we build on, and we continue the process again and again, and it doesn't change at all. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're picking your phone up. Is that Todd calling?
Bloody
Your
Kev keeps calling me. Kev keeps calling me. I said stop calling me. But no, literally. Sorry, where was I? So it just seems like the strategy that we're doing, we literally could be going for players and waiting 5-6 years for them to develop at Chelsea or on loan, and then that is going to be our spine rather than signing established
that's
players.
What I think the plan seems to be. Like they're hoping that in 2-3 years' time, the guys that are 22, 23 now will be 26, 27 or whatever. And those will then be the experienced heads rather than actually signing the experience in the first place. So it does feel like a little bit warped logic and doesn't really make sense. But we could be back here in a couple of years having a very, very different conversation if it works out. But it just feels like a gamble basically sums it up perfectly of what we're doing right now. Everything just seems to be a gamble. It might work, it might not. There's a lot of risk involved in what we're doing.
So much.
Yeah. Let's look into the Brighton game. The second Brighton preview in the space of a week.
Groundhog Day.
I'm not looking forward to going back down there again.
Honestly, it feels like reliving your nightmare. Just back again.
Yeah, back again. I mean, here's my stance on it. Maresca has a chance to fix things. He has a chance to genuinely regain the little trust that I have back. He has a chance to, like you've got a pickaxe, just chip away a little bit. Or maybe I was wrong thinking that we should have got rid of this gaffer. Maybe I was wrong. All he has to do is start Jorgensen, and he is on the road to redemption. The road to redemption. Valentine's Day is coming up. I'm not going to be getting any roses for Enzo Maresca. It's not happening. But what I do think is if he gets his goalkeeper right against Brighton, that is the first step in, honestly, I say a rebuilding process. You just got to gain trust from the fans again, because I lost it. The fact that you can play Sanchez again in the cup, you're a bum. You play bums, you are a bum. That's the way I see it. I said it on TalkSport as well. How can you disagree with that? He's the worst goalkeeper in English football. He's so bad. He's so bad. Has any other goalkeepers in English football actually made more mistakes leading to goals than Robert Sanchez? I don't actually think there is one. I really don't know. Maybe if we go down to the national leagues and all of that, you might find one. Who knows? But the point is, the goalkeeper is the first step of this process. We talk about taking the FA Cup seriously. We don't even have to have that conversation anymore. We have to get top 4. Brighton is a mid-table team. They are a mid-table team. They're a worse team than they were last season. So I go into this game with more confidence knowing that we are in a similar position. We're actually in a better position than we were last year, but we're regressing now instead of improving. We have to win this game. I suppose the question I ask you guys is, without potentially having a striker, we might be forced to play Nkunku up front again. What do we do in terms of the back line and the midfielders as well? You don't have many options, but
mate, there's not many options. This is it. You look at the changes that he made at the for Friday night, right? There'll be some changes again, but you actually look at the changes that we've got available, they're minimal. All right, Jorgensen probably goes back in goal, and you imagine that Levi Colwell comes in for one of Tosin or Chalobah. That's the only changes you're making at the back. Reece is not going to play in this game, let's be real. So you're looking at a back line of Jorgensen. I'd probably go Chalobah, Colwell, and Gusto. Midfield, obviously, Enzo Fernandez comes back in alongside Moises Caicedo. And then the attack, Guiu's obviously out. Jackson, we don't know whether he's fit or not. And then it's just a case of, well, do you bring Madueke in to start over Sancho or Neto? Other than that, it's going to be the exact same attack that we saw. So really, we're looking at maybe three changes, maybe 4 changes that can actually be made to the team. And we can't really say that any of those changes make a significant difference to us.
I think the goalkeeper makes a massive difference.
It's not going to make us win. It's not going to make us win the game. Like
it
won't. No, it won't. Jorgensen played on, so you're telling me, right, that Jorgensen in goal makes Nkunku have more than one touch in the Brighton box and makes us have more than one shot on target? No, he doesn't.
Potentially, because Jorgensen's distribution will actually go to a Chelsea player.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, right, Jorgensen, all right, he might make, obviously he's a better keeper than Sanchez, but he's not going to make us have more shots on target.
It's honestly, I think it's
finally on the same page. Alex,
I'm just looking at it and I'm just thinking, like, well, okay, Enzo comes into midfield instead of Dewsbury Hall. You'd expect an improvement there. But just in terms of, I mean, I'm not expecting anything different from Nkunku as a number 9, if it is Nkunku there. I would expect him to have more than one touch in the Brighton box, but I'm not expecting him to do anything different than what we've seen him do all season as a number 9. So I'm not. Is
there anyone else that can play there that would be better than Nkunku in that position?
No, because if Guiu's out and if Jackson is missing for this game, I mean, he's not been seen. He's not been seen in any training photos this week
We've
so
seen
far.
Palmer as a false 9.
We said never play him there again.
It just doesn't work.
No.
Like, basically,
I mean, Nkunku kind of is a false 9. He's not a real 9. He's not a false 9. I don't know what he is.
But Maresca's got to fight, because we're stuck with Nkunku now for the rest of the season. Maresca's got to find a way of getting something out of him. He needs to use him.
Nkunku. He's stuck with us, not we're stuck with him.
Well, we are also stuck with him as well. Like, if you've got him, then you've got to find a way of using him and getting more out of him.
That's an own goal from the directors and an own goal from recruitment, because you brought in Nkunku to be a first team player. You brought him in and he was injured at the time, but we waited a whole season for him to come in eventually. And everyone was excited that Nkunku would be a player that we potentially build around. Yet when he eventually was fit, he was informed that he's not, in fact, part of the long-term plans here, and he'd be considered for sale. He wasn't sold, but then again, that player knows that he's not part of your plans, yet you're bringing him on, or worse, starting him in a game, in a knockout game where you're expecting to motivate your team to a win and to inspire your teams to a win. Well, it's not going to happen. And quite frankly, that's not an Nkunku problem. Yeah, I mean, he should be doing better, striker or not. Some of the chances that he hasn't finished are just unacceptable. But also, can you blame the player if he's coming on and he's looked at now as the player to make a difference, when, again, he's not been considered part of Chelsea's plans? Regardless whether he does well or not, there's no incentive there to anything that happens beneficially to him as a player and as a professional anyway. So for me, that's my biggest problem. And I don't really have any confidence going into this game, purely because now we've given Brighton the confidence boost they've been missing recently after 2 sore defeats, coming back and getting a win against Chelsea, knocking us out the cup, and then having to welcome us once again at their ground, knowing our weaknesses, knowing how much a lack of depth we now have. You know, we don't take pride anymore in a bench that's kind of rich with with choice there as well. So it's kind of like what you put out there. And I think at the moment it's quite predictable to see what Chelsea can put out there. You know, it's not. But yeah, like I said, I think I want to give Maresca benefit of the doubt, because I think, you know, this really is like a second chance of redemption. It's like a do-over. And if now, as you say, you can focus on the league and the Conference League, then show us that, because I think we're all looking at this game. It's an absolute must win. We look at our position in the league, you know, Newcastle and Man City play each other. They are just below us. You know, they've made reinforcements. They've been ambitious for the rest of their window, for the rest of their season. And there is absolutely no room to fall on this one. And the draw is not going to be acceptable either. So there's a lot of pressure there for Maresca to go, do something differently, inspire something as well, and show just how tactically you can be flexible and, yeah, win this game. But for me, absolutely must win. And I dread to think if that game even is a draw, what happens?
Well, we've got to win. I mean, it can't. If we draw, it's 2 points lost in my eyes, and it's a massive, you know, downgrade on last season. I'm sure we got the double over Brighton last year. So
we did.
And previously they did the double over us, didn't they?
Yeah, but what I would say though as well is, by the like, this time last year we were mid-table. We're fourth now. It's not even comparable. So, you know, all right, if we were to lose this game, yes, we beat Brighton at the Amex last year, whatever. But like, we're still in a miles better position than we were this time last year.
Charlie, I think the reason people are worried is because last season around this time, or let's just say towards the end,
we started to pick up results. Yeah,
no, but we had players that were injured starting to become available. We started to discover that we actually had top talent that we didn't know we had, and we could build around that. And we had a squad that finally started to gel together. We've had a squad now that had last season to gel together. Some of the players are even here the year before that. And yet I feel less confident because unlike what we had last year when we were going in an upwards trajectory in the second half of the season, we're going the opposite way. So that leaves me thinking that unless Villa slip up or Newcastle slip up or City slip up or Forest slip up, whoever it is, then we ultimately, even playing good football, will not be able to challenge for the top four. I mean, maybe fifth is a possibility. I do think we can get fifth. I think we can get fourth as well without injuries. But I thought we could be in the title race without injuries. And then we had injuries that came in and, you know, look how that changed our season. So that's my stance on it. You look at what everyone else is doing and what they've done. Forest, I know they haven't really spent Newcastle the same, but if you look at City and Villa, for example, they are just in a fantastic position to capitalise on us basically fumbling the bag in January. And I don't think we've got anyone else to blame except the board for that. But Maresca, he has a part to play. I do think if we don't get top four, though, and Maresca gets the goalkeeper right, for example, I would blame it on the board. I wouldn't blame it on him. And I don't think he should be sacked either for that. If he gets the goalkeeper right, like any system, you need time to implement it. It doesn't matter how long the players have had together. They haven't played together in this system. But yeah, I mean, if he can get one thing right, maybe he can get another thing right. But I don't even know which goalkeeper he's going to pick, let alone what tactics he's going to come out with.
Yeah, it's tricky, mate. It's a difficult game. And I think the mad thing is that not many Chelsea fans actually feel that confident that we're going to get a result on Friday. That's the reality of the situation. Like, I didn't really feel confident heading down on Saturday for the Cup. And, you know, I think we could there'll be similar feelings for a lot of fans heading into this game. But it's a massive weekend because if we can win this game, one of Newcastle and Man City are dropping points. So we've got a chance to put 2 or 3 points on one of those teams or both of them. So this is a massive weekend, a huge weekend for us. We're lucky that so many teams have lacked consistency and we're able to be in the position we're in, having only won 2 of our last 8 league matches. If we can just take advantage of just for once, then this is an opportunity to create a small a gap albeit a small one, but it's an opportunity to pull points clear of people we're contending with. And every chance you get to do that, you have to take it.
Also, I'm still looking ahead at the games that are still left to play. The reverse fixtures of the teams, the top teams that we've really struggled to beat. And, you know, I mean, City already done their business over us, but, you know, we're still yet to play the reverse fixtures with obviously like Liverpool, you've got Arsenal, Tottenham. We always seem to win that one, at least. But you know what I mean? Even United, and the fact that we
play Newcastle away, Villa away, we've got
Newcastle, Villa away. There you go.
Yeah, Arsenal away.
Oh my God, there's more than
it's
I
Arsenal away,
imagined.
Villa away, Newcastle away, and Forest away. We've still got those 4 difficult away games.
There you go. There you go. So I literally look at this Brighton game and I'm thinking there is nothing else but 3 points that's acceptable from that one. It is literally as simple as that. Because then you go and play Villa away. Villa, a team that made reinforcements in January because they're in the Champions League. They're very much in the top 4 race. And what?
Well, I hope we can do it. Before we wrap it up, guys, what's the score predictions for Brighton? I'm going to say 1-1, to be honest with you. I'm going to say
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, guys, that hurts me.
No, you can say we're going to win.
Well, I said we'd win 2-1. We lost 2-1, so that's fun, isn't it?
Well, maybe it'll happen this time.
Maybe it'll happen this one.
So you're saying a win?
Yeah, I'm going to say 2-1 because I'm so delusionally optimistic, aren't I? But yeah, 2-1 Chelsea.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, guys, put your score predictions below as well in the comments. See what you have to say. And also, what do you think about the divide in the fan base? Who do you believe is the biggest problem at Chelsea? Do we actually have players capable of getting us where we need to be this year in terms of Champions League football? Have we got enough quality? And yeah, let us know as well, guys, if you have any other thoughts. Subscribe to Charlie and Nina. Their channels are going to be in the description. All the best, guys, and we're going to catch up very, very